Imagine walking into a crowded room where everyone is speaking at once. The fluorescent lights buzz like angry hornets. Someone's perfume hits you like a wall. Every conversation competes for your attention, and you can't filter any of it out. Now imagine feeling this way every single day. This is just a glimpse into how some autistic people experience the world, not because something is broken, but because their brains process information fundamentally differently. Autism isn't a disease waiting for a cure, it's a different operating system entirely. And understanding this difference reveals fascinating truths about how all human brains work, how society shapes what we call normal, and why the diversity of human minds might be our greatest collective strength. For decades, autism was misunderstood as a rare condition. Parents were blamed, mothers especially, accused of being cold and causing their children's withdrawal. But today, we know autism affects about 1 in 36 people. You probably know someone who's autistic, even if you don't realize it. Maybe it's the coworker who remembers every detail from a meeting but struggles with small talk. Maybe it's the kid who can name every dinosaur species but finds birthday parties overwhelming. Maybe it's the friend who cancels plans at the last minute, not because they don't care, but because their energy ran out. So what's happening in the autistic brain? Your brain constantly receives input from your eyes, ears, and skin far more than you could possibly pay attention to. So it filters, it prioritizes. You don't consciously notice the pressure of your clothes or the hum of your refrigerator until someone mentions them. This filtering is automatic for most people. But for many autistic people, this filtering system works differently. Their brains may not dampen sensory input as effectively, meaning they experience the world with far more raw data coming in constantly. Imagine trying to have a conversation while someone shouts random numbers in your ear, a strobe light flashes in your peripheral vision, and your shirt feels like sandpaper. This is daily reality for many autistic individuals. When an autistic person covers their ears in a restaurant or leaves a party early, it's not being difficult, it's self-preservation. Their nervous system is being bombarded, and they're doing what anyone would do in an overwhelming situation, trying to reduce the input enough to function. Now let's talk about social cognition. Human social interaction is incredibly complex when you stop to think about it. When you have a conversation, you're not just processing words. You're reading facial expressions, interpreting tone of voice, tracking body language, remembering social norms, and calculating what the other person knows versus what you know all simultaneously. For most people, this happens automatically. Autistic people often process social information through different neural pathways. Where a non-autistic person might intuitively feel that someone is being sarcastic, an autistic person might need to consciously analyze the context, the speaker's history, and the logical consistency of their statement. Many autistic people become experts at consciously learning social rules that others absorb unconsciously. They might memorize that looking at someone's nose is close enough to eye contact, or that certain phrases signal the end of a conversation. But this conscious processing requires more energy, more cognitive bandwidth. Think of it this way. Imagine everyone around you speaks a second language fluently. You've learned it too, but you had to study it formally, with textbooks and flashcards. You can communicate effectively, but it takes concentration. Meanwhile, everyone else chats effortlessly, making jokes and cultural references that fly over your head. This is what social interaction often feels like for autistic people, a constant translation process that never becomes automatic. Here's something surprising. Autistic social struggles are often most intense with neurotypical people, not with other autistic people. Recent research found that when autistic people interact with each other, their communication is just as effective as non-autistic communication. The deficit only appears when we judge autistic behavior by non-autistic standards. Another crucial aspect of autistic cognition is what researchers call monotropism, a different way of distributing attention. Most people have a polytropic attention style, maintaining awareness of multiple things at once. You might cook dinner while listening to a podcast and occasionally checking your phone. Your attention is diffuse. For monotropic individuals, attention locks intensely onto one thing at a time. When an autistic person is focused on something, they're really focused to the point that switching tasks can be genuinely uncomfortable. They might not hear you call their name. They might lose track of time entirely. This isn't stubbornness, it's how their cognitive system manages its resources. This intense focus has enormous advantages. It's why autistic people often develop encyclopedic knowledge about their interests. It's why they notice patterns and details that others miss. Many of history's most innovative thinkers showed traits consistent with autism: individuals who could dive impossibly deep into problems, who saw connections others couldn't. The same cognitive style that makes small talk exhausting can make specialized expertise extraordinary. But monotropism also explains what's often called meltdowns or shutdowns. When an autistic person's intense focus is interrupted, especially without warning, it's genuinely distressing. Their entire cognitive system needs to reconfigure. If they're already low on energy from sensory overload or hours of social masking, this interruption can push them past their limits. A shutdown might look like withdrawing. A meltdown might involve crying or shouting. Either way, it's not a choice, it's a nervous system response. Speaking of masking, this is crucial for understanding the autistic experience. Masking is the conscious effort to hide autistic traits and mimic non-autistic behavior. It's learning to make eye contact even when it feels uncomfortable. It's scripting conversations in advance. It's suppressing the urge to move your body in ways that feel natural, behaviors like hand flapping or rocking that actually help regulate the nervous system. Masking can be remarkably effective. Many autistic people, especially women, become so skilled that no one suspects they're autistic. But masking comes at a terrible cost. Research consistently links high camouflaging with anxiety, depression, and autistic burnout. Imagine spending every waking moment performing a character, constantly monitoring yourself, never able to truly relax. The exhaustion accumulates over years. This explains why autism diagnoses have increased dramatically, especially among adults who've struggled their whole lives without knowing why. We're finally recognizing forms of autism that don't match our stereotypes. The quiet girl who gets perfect grades but has no close friends. The successful software developer who needs hours alone after every meeting to recover. The middle-aged parent who realizes their own autism after their child is diagnosed. Here's something fascinating. Autistic brains show remarkable consistency in some differences. One prominent theory suggests that autistic brains may be less predictable in their responses to sensory input, making the world feel constantly surprising, even when nothing obvious has changed. This connects to what many autistic people describe: a deep need for routine. If your brain doesn't automatically smooth out the world's inconsistencies, then routines become anchors. Eating the same breakfast, taking the same route to work, these aren't limitations, they're strategies for navigating a world that feels more chaotic. Understanding autism also means grappling with how society defines normal. The diagnostic criteria for autism were developed by observing mostly young, mostly male patients in clinical settings. They frame autistic traits as deficits. But what if we framed them differently? What if we saw sensory sensitivity as heightened perception, the ability to detect things others miss? What if we saw intense interests as passions? What if we saw direct communication as honesty? This perspective is called the neurodiversity paradigm, the idea that neurological differences like autism, ADHD, and dyslexia are natural variations in human biology, not diseases to be cured. Just as biodiversity strengthens ecosystems, neurodiversity might strengthen human communities. Autistic brains aren't broken versions of normal, they're different, with their own patterns of strength and struggle. So what does all this mean for you? First, question your assumptions about what normal behavior looks like. The person who doesn't make eye contact might be listening more carefully than anyone. The person who seems socially awkward might be working harder than you can imagine just to be there. Second, recognize that different brains need different things. Some people need more quiet, more predictability, more explicit communication. Accommodating these needs isn't special treatment, it's basic respect. Finally, appreciate that human diversity includes cognitive diversity. The autistic perspective, with its intensity, its pattern recognition, its different relationship with social convention, has inherent value. Throughout history, people who saw the world differently have pushed humanity forward, often precisely because they didn't see things the way everyone else did. Autism isn't a puzzle to be solved or a tragedy to be prevented. It's a different way of being human, complex, challenging, sometimes difficult, and often beautiful. Different isn't less. Sometimes it's exactly what the world needs.